Okay, we're starting with our review, 7.1. Okay, I said 7.1, but 7.1 through 7.3. Our first question, the ratio AB to BC is 4 to 1, and AC equals 50. Find the value. So these are the steps that I expect you to show. Step 1, you're going to draw your segment. So over here, I drew my segment. Helps if you actually put on, I changed the question a bunch of times now. Here we are. Okay, so we're here. We have A, B, C. Step 2 says set up the segment addition using variables. So AC equals AB plus BC. The sum of the total segment is the sum of its parts. Number 3, we're going to substitute in those distances. When we knew this, we know that the ratio is 4 parts to 1 part. We don't know what those parts are, so we represent that with an x. So we have 4x, 1x. Remember those coefficients match that x coefficient here with our ratio. So they just come directly down. But you have to remember to attach that x to it. Our third step is now to substitute those in. So when we substitute those in, we have 50 equals 4x plus 1x. Nice job. Now we are going to solve. So that gives me 50 equals 5x. Divide by 5. What is it? Yep, x equals 10. And then our last part is to substitute it back in to find our answer. So we know that AB equals 4 times 10, yep, which is going to be 40. And we know that BC is just going to be x, which is just 10. So I'd recap by just writing my answer as AB equals 40 and BC equals 10. I put that back together. You see 40 plus 10 equals 50. I know I did it right. Do you need another second, or can I switch the slide?
Where you get the 4 from number 5?
So our first step, we see that the perimeter, let's cut that out. The perimeter is 60 feet, and the ratio of length to width is 3 to 2. Find the length and the width of the rectangle. First step in a problem like this is you're drawing the rectangle. So we're going to go over here. You're going to draw your rectangle. When we draw a rectangle, we know that the length is the longer side here, and the width is this side here. We know that the ratio is 3 to 2, so we're going to complete that. We still don't know how many parts of each of those there are, so we're going to write 3x, 2x. So 3 to 2, notice again that the coefficients match the ratio. So 3 parts for 2 parts. So for every 3 of one, we're going to have 2 of the other. Now we want to complete the ratio using that. That's step number 2. Step number 3 is we're going to write that perimeter equation. What's the equation for perimeter? It's not length times, so that's area. What's the other one? Okay, I heard it up here. So, that's not supposed to be a P, sorry. 2 length plus 2 width.
So it's not P?
So perimeter equals 2 length plus 2 width. Yep. And then I just messed up. That was what I was correcting, so I just said the whole thing. And then in Cozy.
So the first one always going to be length, and the second one always going to be width. You know, you see it say 3 to 2.
So now that we have this, we can substitute in. So we see that the perimeter, I don't actually have to write perimeter again because I know the value of it. What is our value? So we have 60 feet equals 2. My length is 3x. My width is 2x. Our next part is to solve. So I end up with 60 feet equals 6x plus 4x. Which gives me 60 feet equals 10x. I divide by 10. When I divide by 10, what am I left with? 6. Last step is to solve. So we have length equals 3x, which is going to be 3 times 6. I dropped up the feet there, so 6 feet. Width equals 2 times x, which is going to be 2 times 6 feet. Okay, that gives me what? 3 times 6 is? 18 feet. 2 times 6 is? 12 feet. Okay, so our first step here is to set up that cross multiplication. So you're going to go here, you cross multiply. I did this with my other class. I did it as those problems we started with. This is where they had their errors. So we know 7 times 6 is?
42.
Okay, equals. And that's 3 times y plus 3. Make sure you put those parentheses. So these are the steps that we had. Again, we begin by cross multiplying. Make sure you put parentheses around the x plus y plus 3. You distribute your 3 to all terms, and then we are going to set it up. You have to subtract the 9 and then divide by 3. So we end up with x equals 11. Okay, so here we see we have days to week. We have to make sure we get them in the same units. We can do that by having 1 week equals how many days? 7 days. We see when this happens, we can now cross out our units. We end up with 1 times 4, which is 4, over 2 times 7, which is 14. We see we have a common factor. The common factor between these is 2. We can reduce. We end up with 2 over 7. So our scale factor or our ratio for this one is going to be that 2 over 7. Okay, so our first part is list the congruent angle pairs. So our congruent angle pairs here, we see our angle B is congruent to angle E. And we have angle, I can't see the angle A, which is congruent to angle D. And we have last but not least angle C, which is congruent to angle F. Nice job. Okay, so in this one we know this based on the way the problem is set up with the pictures. We see just because of how they're actually laid out. On other problems, you'll actually have them drawn in with angle measurements, so you'd have the degrees or the congruent lines and make sure they match. So if this had 1 congruent line, this had 2 congruent lines, you'd make sure the next one had 1 congruent line, 2 congruent lines to match with. But this one, just because of the way it's laid out, we knew that those were going to be congruent.
Sometimes, it be switched up.
Okay, so next part is we want to write the ratios in letters with the corresponding sides. So I'm going to start with AB. What side is the corresponding side to AB?
ED.
Yep, so we have DE, which is equal to BC over EF. And last but not least, we have CA over. Okay, with that, our second step after that is to now write out the numbers with them. So what is the distance of AB?
12 over 18.
12 over 16. We end up with 24 over 32, and we end up with 18 over 24. Now we've created those ratios. Now we have to reduce them. I'm going to change my color so you can see that I'm reducing. So what goes into, we see 4 goes into both. 4 goes into 12. How many times? Okay, what goes into both? 24 and 36. 32. So how many times does 8 go into 24?
3.
How many times does it go into,
4.
thank you. And last but not least, we got to verify. 6 goes into it. How many times does 6 go into 18? Go into 24? Okay, we see that all of those match, which means that these sides are proportional, and we have a scale factor of 3 to 4. So scale factor of 3 to 4. That's your final answer on this page. So right now, we are at the point where we have to identify our scale factor. So to do this, we have to choose 2 sides that are proportional to show that ratio. So we know that RS and GH are 10 and 15.
Why wouldn't it be HG? Why you want to say it? Is it because that thing got to stay in the middle of the
I did it that way because since I started at R, G is the same spot on the next triangle. That's the only reason I did it that way. So we can reduce that. 5 goes into both of them. How many times does 5 go into 10?
2 times.
15? Okay, our next one, we're just going to double check one more time. And we see that we also have ST and we have HJ. So when we do that, that H looks really wonky. I apologize. ST is 8 and HJ is 12. What goes into both of those? Yes, I write 4 instead. So 12, we're now going to cancel. We can reduce that. What goes into both of those? You said 4. 4 goes into 8. How many times? Into 12? Okay. So now we have 2/3 as the ratio we're going to be using. We see that. Now we can set it up with the missing side. We see that RT is in the first triangle, which is what we wrote in our numerator. So it has to stay over there. Say it again.
A -2?
No, it's an equal sign.
Oh.
Okay,
You
we
have to be sideways like that. Go around.
Okay, so now we're performing that cross multiplication. When we do that cross multiplication here, we see that we end up with 2 times 9 equals 3 times x. So we end up with 18 equals 3x. Now we isolate that x. We isolate that x by dividing by 3. So x equals 6. That is our whole problem.
Oh, that's crazy.
We're beginning with determining whether the triangles are similar. If they are similar, write a similarity statement. Explain your reasoning. So our first part is, how did we tell if two triangles were similar yesterday? What postulate did we use?
The AA.
The AA postulate, which requires us to do what?
Have a congruent mark. No.
Show that two angles are congruent. So we want to see if we can do that. So our first pair of angles that are congruent, which two angles do we know are congruent? Yep. So we know that angle QRP and angle SRP are going to be congruent. Okay, now that we have that, I'm going to write like this. I don't like the way I had that. Oh, I'm still on that.
Why you put and?
I put an and.
Plus.
You're right. I'd probably prefer it being a congruent sign. That's what I've been. But you can leave it and then just put in a congruent sign at the end.
Wait, so don't put.
So you had two options. If you wrote like I first wrote it, which is what I was going to do until I had the eraser on still, you could write this and this are congruent. So the two angles are congruent. Or you could literally just write the two angles are congruent with the congruent sign. I didn't think to do that until I accidentally had the eraser on, so then I just changed it. So either way, I'm accepting it. We need to find another pair of angles that are congruent. So right now we see we have an angle that is 50 degrees and we have one that's 45 degrees. Are those two angles congruent? No, they're not, right? So what we have to do is we have to find if either of the other angles are congruent. So we can pick one to solve for.
But listen, them little boxes are not both 90 degrees.
So that's what we just showed right here, that angle R is congruent to angle R. That's what this one right here said. So our next one is to show that one of these two angles. So we can either solve for angle Q, PR, or angle S. Angle S is less letters, so I'm going to solve for angle S. So over here I have 180 minus 90 plus 45. What is 90 minus 40? 9? Nope.
135.
Thank you. So what is 180 minus 135? It is 45 degrees. You are correct. So we see that it's 45 degrees. So is 45 degrees congruent to 50?
No.
No. So there's no way for the other triangle to have two congruent angles with that triangle. So we say none.
So this
Over here we say no, we can't use it. And then we write a similarity statement. We can't.
Oh, no.
So we say not.
Not enough information.
On our
Not-
test, is the questions like it's gonna be numbered like that?
No, you're going to have to know how to do that. Not enough congruent angles.
Now put
Not enough congruency.
We are here. We want to begin to determine whether these two angles are similar. If they are similar, please write out the similarity statement. Explain your reasoning. So once again at the top, we have to see a pair of congruent angles. Can anybody tell me a pair of congruent angles?
VY and WXY. Oh, wait. VY and WX.
So I like the way you said it. So angle UYV is congruent to angle UXW. And we see this because they both have right angle marks. So nice job. That's a good one. We know one other angle is congruent. Which angle do we know?
I don't like what we trying like this. I don't got me confused.
Would it be like
Y. We already did Y. U.
So you see here, we know these. So we either have to show this angle or these two angles. Which one?
One U be congruent because it's the same and for both of the triangles.
Yep, so U is congruent to U because it is in both triangles. You see the smaller triangle and the larger triangle each have U as one of its vertex. So now we've shown that we have two congruent angles in a triangle, which means that we are able to use the AA similarity postulate. So we're going to have A. And then we are going to write down our similarity statement. So this is the part tomorrow I really want you to remember. Remember, we name these with our triangles. It does not matter the original order that you're naming it. So let's just do UVW, similar to. And then we are going to do the next one. And we have to make sure that the angles that are congruent to each other line up. So U is congruent to U, so it gets to go first. The second one's going to be what?
X. W.
W.
Y.
And then what?
Z.
X.
Is that a U or
So that's all we gotta write?
Time out. Where did I go? Oh, we have fixed that. I'm sorry for that error. We see that U VY is congruent to UWX.
You might as well collect our stuff now before we forget it at home tomorrow.
I'm sorry.
We're not done. Is this the last one?
Right.